So recently I was sent over the Eibos Filament Dryer, and in this video I'm just going to talk to you about my first impressions of it, how it is to use, and why I really like it. So the first question is, what the hell is the Eibos Filament Dryer? And basically, it's a relatively large filament dryer compared to some of those smaller units that only take one spool of filament that dries out your filament. So if, like me, you've ever got your filament wet through humidity because you do stupid things like put it in a room where you're trying to dry your washing, well, this is where a filament dryer comes in really handy. I've always used one of the small single ones before because it was cheap, it was cheerful, and it did the job. But when Eibos reached out to me and asked if I wanted to test this out, I jumped at the opportunity because I like testing out new things to do with 3D printing, but also as well because it has a much larger area so you can dry out more spools if you need to and just store them in there. It's a bit of a DIY kit, so it comes in all of these different parts, and you basically got to screw all the frame together and then pop all like the perspex sheets on there as well. And then if you are using big, large spools of filament, so if you have like a big single 3 kilogram version, for example, you've also got this, which is like this extender that will go between the top like panel lid bit and the base as well. Once it's all assembled, it's really easy to use. I really like the fact that this has like a normal human being interface on it. My previous filament dryers that I've used, they're all like labeled, so depending on what material you want to dry out, they're all labeled like 1, 2, and 3, and you have to basically select that. But that means you've also then got to refer to the instruction manual to know what you're drying out to get your temperatures set. On this one, you've got all the options to cycle through the different types of filament that you're using, but you can also manually set things like your temperature, the time that it's going to be going for, and it shows you things like the humidity level in there as well, which is really handy, so you can see all of that on there. Another nice feature that this has as well is it's got these like little motors down at the bottom, so if you want to spin your filament around like a nice rotisserie chicken, you've also got that option there just to get some really even coverage. At the top, you've got a nice handle so you can lift the thing off, and you've also got the bit for your filament to go through as well, so if you want to feed your filament through this into a machine and not have to take your filament in and out of it and that way keep it dry, you've also got that functionality. So all in all, it's got a lot of stuff going for it. In my experience, it was really easy to set up and get my filament dried out. But the thing that I really like about it as well, and this might come in handy for a lot of you terrain builders out there as well, is because it is such a big thing, you've got room in there as well to dry out all sorts. So I've been drying out loads of tea leaves and drying out loads of flocking, popping it on these little trays and popping it in there, and it does a great job of drying that out. It can get really hot and you can manually adjust that temperature like I said at the beginning. You can see what the humidity is in there. So it gives a much bigger range in my experience than any other type of filament dryer that I've used in the past. So not just for filament, I can dry out loads of things in there and save energy. I don't have to use the oven and really drive my wife crazy with that sort of thing. So well done, Eibos, you've managed to save my marriage. Build quality wise, it's a really nicely built thing. Once you've gone through those steps of screwing it all together and putting that frame together, which takes around about 10 minutes to get done, the whole thing looks nice. It doesn't stand out compared to something like my Bamboo Lab P1S printers. Basically very similar, like black base with clear perspex stuff around the sides and they all like a black frame. So it actually fits really nicely with that aesthetic. Another really nice thing about the build quality is it's quite heavy. So that base is really heavy because obviously you've got things like the motors in there, you've got some nice rubberized feet. The whole thing just feels really well built. And the good thing about this, it means if you are using it with a printer to feed the filament directly into your printer, on other ones that I've used in the past, they're all plastic and they're quite light, which basically will save on costs and like shipping and all of that. But the problem is that as you get to the end of the spool and the printer is pulling it, it basically means that when the printer is getting to the end of the spool, it can then pull the whole thing, which can cause some big disasters. On this, because it is quite heavy, you don't necessarily have to worry about that. It's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to knock it over. You're not going to knock it off your desk. If you are feeding your filament directly into the printer from this as well, again, you're not going to have to worry about the printer dragging the whole thing because it's heavy. It's nice, it's solid, it feels really well made. So that's my impressions of the Eibos Filament Dryer. I really like it. Like I say, it's a bit of a DIY kit, so you get all the stuff and you have to put it together. But once it's together, it's really easy to use. It's clear, it's concise, it's got a really nice menu to use. Those buttons feel tactile, they work well, they're responsive. Love the fact that it shows me what the humidity levels are in there. And I really like the fact that it is big enough to obviously put multiple spools in there. But more importantly, if you're a bit crafty and you want to do other stuff, you can put other things in there as well. It gets nice and hot and it dries things out. And it does it really efficiently. I mean, stuff I've been putting in there has been wet paint, wet tea leaves, and it dries it out within hours. So it does a very good job. You're going to see this thing show up in so many videos now, especially when it comes to tabletop crafting. But if you are looking for a filament dryer out there, it is more expensive than all of those single units, so that is something to consider. But it means that you can dry out multiple things at the same time. You can store multiple rolls of filament in there at the same time. It's more solid and sturdy, and it's going to stay put on your desk or on your printer when you're feeding it into the printer. So it does have a lot of pros on there. And in my opinion, if you're doing other stuff within the hobby as well, it offers that flexibility there. So it just has a bit more use case than one of those single use ones, at least in my opinion. So thanks so much to Eibos for sending this over to me. It's a really nice filament dryer. I recommend at least checking it out. It certainly has its use cases. Depending on what your hobby setup looks like, it could also do a lot more than just filament drying as well. So if you've got any questions, throw them down in the comments below. And if not, I will hopefully see you in the next one. Ta-ra for now.